everybody. Welcome to Rachel's Reviews. We are really excited today to be here to be talking about more Disney Plus, hidden gems on Disney Plus. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and I am joined by Ryan today.
Hey, Rachel, how are you?
Doing pretty good. I finally got my movie fix in this weekend, going to drive-in movie theater. So that was pretty fun.
Oh, that must be nice.
Yeah, I might have cried. It's been a long 6 weeks.
I am going through serious withdrawals right now. None of you can see my right hand right now, but it is shaking like a leaf over here because that's my movie ticket holding hand.
Yeah.
And it's like Gene Wilder in Blazing Saddles. It's like it needs to do something.
That's right. Yes. So I'm feeling pretty good, feeling on top of the world today. So, well, we are talking more hidden gems on Disney Plus, and we've been doing this now. This is our, fifth one, I think?
Episode number 5.
Yes. So we've talked we've had a lot of picks, so I'm excited about these different ones. I feel like these ones are pretty outside the box for me this time. And so let's get started. What is your first pick?
So the theme for this week's episode is all about the 1990s because, Rachel, you were talking about Boy Meets World last episode. So I was just like, you know what? I think I'm going to take all of my picks from the decade of of the 1990s. So my first choice comes from 1991, and it is The Rocketeer. I've always loved this movie. It's one of my favorite Disney movies, period, regardless of live action, animated, and the like. It was directed by Joe Johnston, who would go on to direct Captain America, the First Avenger. And it's one of those movies that really falls under the radar, especially when you consider everything that Disney has done, especially the cast. You got the likes of Alan Arkin, who, if I remember correctly, makes his film debut in this one. Jennifer Connelly, who would go on to become a big star and is now still acting to this day. Paul Sorvino, who was in Goodfellas. And, of course, Timothy Dalton as the movie's villain, Neville Sinclair, who, of course, was the third iteration of James Bond and would go on to star in movies like Hot Fuzz and is still acting to this day. Really, the only actor who didn't do too much was the main lead, who played Cliff Secord. His name is Bill Campbell, and minus some TV stuff, he never really went on to much, which I find to be really sad. But regardless of that, The Rocketeer it's a really fun movie. It's a great adventure. It's got a tad bit of mystery here and there. The CGI holds up. It's all the scenes with the rocket pack are still really, really good. And it's just a really, really fun movie overall. More people should talk about it.
I agree. I really enjoy The Rocketeer. It has a really nice sense of nostalgia. It feels like it was made in the 40s, it's kind of, if people like Captain America: The First Avenger, then I think you'd like The Rocketeer. Has a lot of the same elements. I mean, same director, so that helps.
Yeah, it's like Captain America: The First Avenger takes place in that same weird sort of world, if you will.
Yeah, sort of everything's sort of sepia toned and old fashioned, and it is a really fun movie with nice chemistry between everybody and a charismatic lead performance, and so yeah, I think that's definitely a good hidden gem. So yeah, that a lot of people haven't seen because it isn't a part of franchise, and that's what we typically think of for superhero movies.
And it's an original idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, it's not based on a comic book or anything like that. So people should totally check that out. I agree. That's a good one. All right. So my first pick it was kind of funny because I was doing a review of the new Dolphin Reef and Elephant movies on Disney Plus for Backseat Directors, which is the new set I've been writing for a little bit. And I started watching this dolphin movie, and I'm like, this is really weird. This is not typical of your typical Disney nature film, because it was all about the crew. And I got about halfway through, and I realized, oh, I'm not watching the right movie. I'm watching I'm watching a movie called Diving with Dolphins, not Dolphin Reef. And and so then I sort of realized that this Diving with Dolphins is all about the crew and how they shot Dolphin Reef, not the actual Dolphin Reef. And I realized that a bunch of these Disney nature films have an accompanying a behind the scenes kind of movie about how they got the shots and how they, and so it's sort of like what you get at the end of the Disney nature films with the behind the scenes shots, but it's a whole movie of it, which is really interesting. And to hear about how they got like in Diving with Dolphins, how they got the whale shots, how they got the shark shots, like it was different cameras they used, stuff like that. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting. So that's my first one. I guess you could say Diving with Dolphins is my first one, but really any of those behind the scenes Disney nature movies, I think people, if you're interested in filmmaking or just these crazy people who do this for their job, then I think you'd like seeing those movies, especially if you've watched the actual movie and then find out all about how they got all the shots and everything. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I one of my favorite behind the scenes like documentaries on how it was made was for the original BBC Planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
How all the shots were made and how they would have to wait for hours and hours upon end to get the result that they wanted. They were literally at the mercy of Mother Nature, so they had to just hope for the best. But having said that, I've always been fascinated by the Disney nature movies, and especially like I was wondering like how on earth did they get that shot? Because it's like it's something that you would be like that seems impossible, but somehow they found a way. So I'll definitely check out Diving with Dolphins because it sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it really was interesting, and almost more the some of the other fishes and the whales even more than the dolphins, but it was really interesting. And so I ended up watching two movies about dolphins that day instead of just one. So yeah. So what is your next pick?
So my second choice is from 1992, and it is the musical called Newsies.
Mm,
This is directed by Kenny Ortega, who would direct many of Michael Jackson's music videos, as well as Hocus Pocus and the High School Musical trilogy. The dude is very, very seasoned in that regard. But Newsies is a movie about a group of newsboys who live in basically slave-like conditions. Like it's pretty sad actually. But they decide, you know what, we're going to take it and stick it to Joseph Pulitzer, who is pretty much like the Jeff Bezos of his time. Like he was one of the richest men on the planet. Like he owned the biggest newspaper in the world at the time. In this movie, he's played by Robert Duvall, who is always awesome in anything he's in. But what makes Newsies so fascinating is that it was the movie that launched the career of one Christian Bale, who would go on to have a lengthy career going up to as recently as Ford v Ferrari last year, which was incredible. If for some reason you all haven't seen Ford v Ferrari,
mm,
it's just fantastic. But Newsies also has Bill Pullman in it, who is always great, and several other child stars that you might recognize. But what makes the movie stick with me is that it's a musical, and it's one of those musicals that got me into musicals in the first place. It's got a lot of catchy songs like "The King of New York," and that I still look that specific number up on YouTube to this very day because it's very well staged and fantastic. But the musical number where they all go on strike and Christian Bale writes "strike" in big letters in chalk where all the news is supposed to go. Like that's just such a great scene. There's a lot of subtle story beats that I also really enjoy, like Christian Bale's loneliness and wanting to go to Santa Fe. It just I could talk about Newsies for hours, but put the period at the end of the sentence. Newsies is underrated in terms of musicals and in terms of Disney musicals, especially. It got the Broadway treatment in the 2010s, which I loved. I believe the recording of that musical is also on Disney Plus. So check that out and check out the '92 version as well.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting story, the story of Newsies, because you have Alan Menken, doing the music, and this was at his heyday. I mean, this is right after Aladdin, and he had a great streak of Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, and then Aladdin. And then he brings this out, and it is a bomb. Not only just at the box office, but also with critics. It uh, it, it did not do well at all. And so what's interesting about it, and I remember going to see it when and because I particularly remember they gave us like little fake newspapers with our tickets, and I remember enjoying it as a kid, but yeah, it bombed. And what's interesting about it is they then with the Broadway musical, they changed things around, they moved things, they did things different, and they end up winning a Tony Award for best musical. And I think that's a pretty big trajectory to go from being this bomb to being a Tony Award winning musical. And I do think they made some changes that made a lot of sense. They got rid of basically all the adult characters except for Pilcher, just minimally, and uh, the I don't think that Bill Pullman was bad, but I think the story is better without him. It's better.
I can see that criticism.
Yeah, the and Anne Margaret I think is so cringeworthy in that first.
That I will acquiesce
Yeah,
on. I'm an Anne Margaret fan, but yes, I will acquiesce when it comes
yes,
to Anne Margaret in the movie. I will
yeah.
document.
Yes, and they added just some new numbers. They changed it around, and they made it way better, I think. But I still really enjoy that original film. It's got an energy to it. I think you'd consider it maybe somewhere similar to maybe partly because it's Kenny Ortega, but I would consider it sort of with these Disney Channel musicals that we get, kind of on that level, made for teenagers with a lot of energy and fun. And I think that they're probably a little harsh on it. I know Roger Ebert said that he hated the movie like 3 times in his review. It's like, I hated this movie. I hated it. He did not like it at all.
I figured
So
you would say that for something like North, but
yeah,
not Newsies.
yeah,
Like, come
he
on,
did not like
Roger.
it at all. So it's an interesting story. It went from a zero to a hero, and Alan Menken ended up having the last laugh there, so that's kind of fun. And but it's definitely worth watching both to see the differences between the two. And so I think it's a good pick to
I
do.
actually had the pleasure of seeing the musical version on the big screen when it was brought to my local theater for a Fathom
Oh,
event,
nice.
and it was really really cool.
Hmm.
Like uh, people underestimate Broadway sometimes, I feel.
Yeah, I saw the touring company of the Broadway musical, and I really enjoyed that. And I've been kind of hit and miss on the Disney Broadway. Some of them I've liked, others I wasn't that thrilled with. I didn't love the Mary Poppins, and I know that they went closer to the book, but I don't know. I didn't really care for it. And
I actually saw Mary Poppins on Broadway itself. One of the
oh,
few
really?
times I went to New York, and yeah, it's there's a song number where Mary Poppins like goes not a, there's a song number where it ends with Mary Poppins surrounded in like hellfire. Like I'm not even
Yeah, there
kidding.
was a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, I
It
mean,
was like this is not the Julie Andrews movie I
no.
remember.
No, and so yeah, I didn't love that one. The Tarzan isn't the best. There's some others, but there's been also some really good ones, and I would include Newsies in that group. There's Newsies, The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, those kind of things. So anyway, that's a good choice. Well, my second choice is technically a series, and it's called The Imagineering Story, and it's they will have one season so far, 6 episodes, and it's all about the history of Disney Imagineering, particularly in the parks, and how they came up with some of the iconic rides, iconic animatronics, and different theming for different parts of Disneyland and Disney World. And I love that kind of stuff. And I do have a real affection for Disneyland. And I'm fascinated by the history of anything to do with Disneyland or Disney World. And so I just really enjoyed this. And I thought, they had some interesting interviews. And it kind of felt like a kind of a Ken Burns type of thing, but for Disney and Disney Imagineering. And so I really recommend it. It was very cool.
Can you imagine if Disney hired Ken Burns to do like a complete Disney history? Like that would make bank. That would make
Yeah,
bank.
that would be really good. I mean, I felt like pretty close. It was very well done. So if you're interested at all in Disney parks and the Imagineering that they do and have done, I think that you'll really like it.
Me living so close to Disney World, sometimes, especially recently, I get a little like homesick, but for Disney because I go like once every couple years or so,
Uh-huh.
and I found this channel where this gentleman like videotaped all of the rides and the monorail and stuff, and I love the monorail to pieces. So I found a video of the monorail, like the complete cycle
Uh-huh.
around Walt Disney World. And point I'm trying to get at is that Walt Disney famously said when he was asked what his favorite attraction at Disney was or what his favorite ride was, it was the monorail because he said that he could view all of his creations in one sitting.
Yeah.
There's something about that I just kind of liked.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. I I haven't been to Disney World since I was 12, but I do love Disneyland and try to get out there every it ends up being about every couple years, but my one of my goals is to go to Disneyland once all this is done. That's one of my goals.
I've actually never been to the California one, but I do want to go there eventually.
It's so fun. It's the best. And one thing, if you like Disney parks and behind the scenes of Disney parks, there's a really good channel on YouTube called Defunct Land.
I've
And
heard of Defunct Land. I
yeah,
believe I watched his one about Adventure Park.
hmm
It's like the park that was so accident prone that it had to
yeah,
be down like almost a year into its existence.
yeah. It's he does some other parks, but I would say about 80% of his content is about Disneyland or Disney World, and so he does such a great job. Very very well
I
done.
think he also did a video where he talked about what's currently known as the Pop Century Hotel at Disney World. It was supposed to be like a far more ambitious
Uh,
project, and now there's just an empty lot there that's not being used.
yeah,
What made me like that episode so much is that I've actually stayed in the Pop Century Hotel and I saw that building and I'm like, oh, what are they building over there? And then I found out that it turned out to be something completely different. So it was
yeah.
like oh, I've been here, and actually was supposed to be a big thing.
Yeah, he just released yesterday one on Tomorrowland. It was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating.
I'll
So,
definitely look that one up.
yeah, it's a good show. So, what do you have next?
So my third choice was inspired because, well, on last week's episode, I mistakenly thought that Tim Curry was dead when he was very much alive. So
Yeah.
I wanted to rectify that situation, and this movie actually rectifies that, but also ties into my '90s theme. It's 1993's The Three Musketeers. Uh,
Ah,
this stars Tim Curry as an evil cardinal, and who breaks up the Three Musketeers because the cardinal wants to take over the crown of France. The Three Musketeers in this movie are played by Kiefer Sutherland, Charlie Sheen, and Oliver Platt, and they are all brought back together with a fourth Musketeer played by Chris O'Donnell, who was 2 years away from starring in the first of the Joel Schumacher Batman movies. Boy, that was a rough time. But The Three Musketeers is a movie that I've seen several times, and I've just loved. It's a great adventure. It's really funny in some cases. It's got a great like chase scene. I guess you call it like a wagon chase, where Chris O'Donnell is set to be executed, and the Musketeers save him, and they kidnap the Cardinal's carriage, and they're driving away. And Charlie Sheen and Oliver Platt find his snack stash, and they're going through it. And Oliver Platt is, in one moment, is like, "The wine is delicious, the champagne is excellent. Remind me to send the Cardinal a note." It's just that's just so funny to me. But to put the period at the end of the sentence, Three Musketeers is definitely underrated and is definitely should be given another chance.
yeah, I haven't seen this movie in years and years, but I remember enjoying it and thinking it was a fun little sort of swashbuckler. I think if you like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, then you'll enjoy watching Three Musketeers. So my third choice is a new release, and so it might not be considered hidden. It's maybe a little stretch, but I really enjoyed last year's Togo.
AKA what the Call of the Wild should have been.
Yes, um, and what it's it would be called Revenge Against Balto. That's what I would call it. Because we learn about Balto that it was a lie. We had no idea. And
It was like the notorious B.I.G. It was all a dream.
and it stars William Dafoe, and I kind of like to joke that this is the prequel to his character in The Lighthouse.
Actually, reading the synopsis about it, I'm like, this is how he went mad.
Yeah. But anyway, so he's this frontier man in Alaska, and this dog, this German Shepherd dog, won't go away, keeps coming back. He tries to get rid of it multiple times, and finally he ends up not only keeping the dog, but it being his most reliable dog on his dog sled team. And I really liked the sort of relationship of him and his wife when she's just kind of like, "You're not going to win with this dog. Like, what are you doing?" And I thought that was fun. And this movie was very well made, especially for Disney Plus. The cinematography, the all the other kind of aspects. There's two scenes where they're crossing this river of ice, and those scenes were so tense and so well done, I thought. And I thought that all the acting was good. William Dafoe was good. It has real dogs, so that's better than Call of the Wild. Just that alone, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. I thought it felt like some of the Disney live action films from the '90s that we haven't had, because for so long Disney only made these huge blockbusters. Aside from the Disney nature films or the sports films, those were the only ones that were a little bit smaller in feel. But I love those movies from the 90s, like White Fang and Iron Will, and movies like that. And we just stopped getting them. And so this was just such a nice throwback to that kind of filmmaking, and I really enjoyed it. And so if people want a really good family movie about a dog, then you can't go wrong with Togo.
This may be a bit of a stretch, but you talking about all these sled dog movies, Togo, White Fang, Iron Will. I brought up Eight Below last week.
Yeah.
Like I think I may be stretching here. I'm putting on my tinfoil hat, but I propose that these are all part of the DSDCU, the Disney Sled Dog Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. I mean, technically, they all are part of a cinematic universe because they're all true stories. Well, no, except for White Fang. All the rest are true stories. Iron Will, Eight Below, Togo. Those are all true stories. Whereas, except for White Fang, which is and Call of the Wild, which are based on novels, but yeah, I mean, I think that could be a pretty gripping anthology. Gripping cinematic universe.
The Twilight Zone, but for sled dogs.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what do you have as your fourth pick?
One final thing on Togo, I was looking it up earlier, and this movie is actually directed by Erikson Core, who directed Invincible, which was one of my picks last week.
Nice.
I was thinking to myself, what has Erikson Core done lately? And then I was like, oh, he's still employed by Disney. He made Togo. Like, the more you know.
Yeah, there you go. But
So,
I do agree. I think Togo was a lot better than Call of the Wild. Much better.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. But my fourth pick, and I want to thank you, Rachel, because when I was giving you my list, you alerted me to the 25th anniversary of this movie. It's a Goofy movie from 1995. So I want to say thank you for letting me know of that, because because I didn't know that it was an anniversary, but it turns out it actually is.
Yeah.
I was going back and forth on whether or not I should include a Goofy movie because it has been getting new popularity in the past couple of years. It has found a bit of a resurgence, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But as someone who has loved it from the very beginning, I'm going to include it anyway. If you've never heard of a Goofy movie, I highly recommend that you do check it out because it's really, really fun. But it's not just fun because, hey, it's Goofy. By nature alone, he is fun. But it's got a surprisingly good, father-son story. Like, there are actually good father and son moments. It's not like, oh, the father's embarrassing the son, wah, wah. But
yeah,
there's some like that. I will give it that now that I think about it. But they're handled well, and there are genuine moments of tension, and they're handled well as well. There's a scene where I won't get too deep into the plot, where Max and Goofy have this big argument, and it's done in a super silly way, as a Goofy movie would probably do. But the underpinning of the father-son relationship was so good that it's like, oh, okay, it's part serious and part funny all at the same time. It was like it found the right balance. But but a Goofy movie is also dated in the right ways as well. Like, the entire goal of the family is to get to the concert for this guy named Powerline, who sounds so much like Prince. Like, it's just crazy. But it's so a product of the 90s, but in the best way possible. So if you haven't checked out a Goofy movie in a while, it is criminally underrated, especially in the story department.
Yeah, no, I love a Goofy movie. I love that dynamic between Max and Goofy, and he's just trying to be a good dad. And you're right, that dynamic is done a lot, but usually it's pretty cringy. But here, like, you actually feel for both characters. You can understand both their perspectives and why they're feeling that way. And the power line's super fun. and even some of the comic relief I think works pretty well with that uh with that, what do they call it, the possum stop or whatever, and some
The
of the other stuff.
it revolves possums. I forget the name of it right now,
Yeah,
but it does revolve around
yeah, it's
possums.
pretty good, and I think the music is catchy in it, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of the original Muppet movie a little bit as far as music. Just kind of, it makes you want to um, bop up and down and kind of dance to the music. It's nice, and so yeah, I think that it's a really fun little movie that the whole family can watch and definitely have a good discussion and relate to Max and Goofy. And I actually don't mind the sequel. It's not as good, but I liked it. I thought it was fun with
I
Goofy
haven't
going.
seen it in a very long time, so it's so I really don't have a
Uh,
ton of memories for it.
it's just Goofy goes and it's going to college at the same time as Max. But I liked it. But I really like that original Goofy movie, so that's a good pick. Well, speaking of sequels, my next pick is a rare recommendation you're going to get from me. I usually would never recommend what I call the cheap quels. Those are the direct to DVD sequels that we got for about 15 years from Disney of their classic films. And usually they're just the worst. I hate them. And they just feel so lazy and thrown together just to get some nostalgia from people who love the original films. And like I said, I just usually do not like them. But I think that there's one that's pretty good. It's Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. Cinderella 2 is garbage. Don't watch that. Cinderella 3, I felt like they're actually trying to tell a new story and to have some pretty good animation, some pretty good music. And in Cinderella 3, the idea is that the Lady Tremaine finds the fairy godmother's wand, and she decides to set things back and go back in time to before the wedding and before the big night for Cinderella, and to try to stop her and stop the glass slipper and just everything. And so there's and they have to try to stop Lady Tremaine and convince the prince that he's in love with Cinderella. And it's good that it has some fun action. It's a pretty good story. I mean, I love time travel stories. I'm a huge sucker for it. But I think it's definitely, if not the best, it's certainly one of the best of these sequels that ever came out.
I remember seeing the TV spots for this movie. This came out in 2007, so that was like my peak Disney Channel viewing, like my Sweet Life of Zack and Cody's and American Dragon Jake Long's and Kim Possible, like that era.
Right.
And I just remember like, oh, Cinderella, that stuff looks like it's for girls, and I was very dumb back then. But hearing about it now, I'm like, man, those direct to DVD movies can kind of get dumped on sometimes.
I mean, they're mostly deserving of it. They're most of them are terrible.
From what I've
But
heard, Mulan 2 is not very good.
no, it's awful.
It,
And most of them are terrible. The worst one, even though I'm not a huge fan of the original Hunchback of Notre Dame, Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 is one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. It is
wow,
so
Rachel,
bad.
say what you really mean.
Yeah, no, it's so bad on every level. And a couple others are okay. I think the second Aladdin one is decent. I
The
think
Return of Jafar.
no, the one after that.
Oh, the one after that.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's not it's watchable. It's fine. I think that the two Lion King ones are decent. Sequel to Bambi is okay. I
Tarzan
think
2?
that's no, that one's bad too.
Oh
Because
man.
yeah, no, because that one, because a couple of them are made from TV shows that didn't end up happening, and so they just combined them together into one movie, and it's really bad. And that's the case with Tarzan. Same with Atlantis, and I think that was the case with the Cinderella too, which is terrible. And
I'm kind of bummed now because I remember seeing the spots for Tarzan 2, and I never saw it, but I was like, that looked really cool. But now it's like, oh, it didn't end up being good. That's
just one gal's opinion that the Little Mermaid, even though I adore Little Mermaid, the second one is not very good. It's literally just the same story except for reversed.
Is this the one where Prince Eric builds the massive wall?
Yes.
I remember that one.
It's not very good. And you have Ursula's sister, and then they have a prequel to The Little Mermaid and
Ariel's Beginning.
And it's okay. It's kind of a footloose story, but it.
Does she actually sing Footloose? Because if
no.
that's the case, then no. I would have run out and bought her right now.
No, but it's the same kind of story. Triton's like outlawed music and dancing, and so it's watchable. But those are the ones I would say are like, watchable.
Let's dance!
Yeah. But I think that one of the worst ones is The Fox and the Hound. That one is terrible.
I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah, don't watch it. And so, anyway, I do think the Cinderella 3 is, like I said, I think it's probably the best of all these sequels. But yeah, it's certainly for sure one of the top 3. No question. There we go. That's probably the only time you'll see one of those on this show. For me at least. So, what is your final pick?
So my final pick is from the year of my birth, 1997, and it is Hercules. This was coming out smack dab in the middle of the Disney Renaissance, where they were just going from strength to strength, and Disney could just do no wrong. This movie was directed by John Musker and Ron Clements, who I believe directed Little Mermaid and Treasure Planet and a bunch of others that I'm blanking on at the minute, but they've done a lot.
Yes, they did. They did Moana, they did Princess and the Frog, and so yeah, they're incredible. They did The Little Mermaid.
But Hercules is of course based on the Greek on the Greek myth, and it's just a great movie. It's got really, really cool songs in there. Like, I listen to Go the Distance like an unhealthy amount of times. It's a great song. It's very motivating. It's got a great cast, including Danny DeVito as Phil, it's Danny DeVito, so of course he's going to be hilarious. And then he's got James Woods in there as Hades. I'll leave the James Woods jokes for our fine viewers. But as far as the rest of the movie goes, it's got beautiful animation. Love Pegasus, and I love all the other gods like Hermes and Zeus, who is voiced by the late Rip Torn. May he rest in peace. Hercules is among the Disney Renaissance, but is almost never talked about. It's really weird. I find that I like that a little more than I do a lot of the other Renaissance ones. But period at the end of the sentence, I do really enjoy Hercules, and it's definitely underrated for sure.
Yes. So Hercules is one of those movies that it's kind of messy. It has so many different ideas going on all at the same time. I mean, you have Greek elements, you have Vegas elements, you have superhero elements, you have parody elements. There's so many things happening. You've got the music, but I don't know, it still kind of works for me. I think it's funny enough. I think it's sweet enough. The music is really, really great. I mean, I love the Muses songs, I think, even more than Go the Distance. But still great. Both of them they're all wonderful songs. And it has a lot of clever ideas. Like, I love and beautiful animation. Like, I love the whole sequence when he's swimming in the like pool of the spirits. like that whole scene is beautiful the way it's animated, and they had a lot going on there, a lot of ideas, but also the voice cast is really strong. I really love Susan Egan as Megara. I love Megara in general. She's so fun. And but then also you got James Wood as Hades, and he's hilarious. And so yeah, I think it's a really fun, eclectic, weird entry in the Disney Renaissance. It's not my favorite, but it's definitely, if I'm in the mood for something a little bit different that doesn't take itself quite so seriously as your Beauty and the Beast or your as your Little Mermaids, that kind of thing, then I think that you can watch Hercules and really have a good time. All right. So my last choice is a Disney Channel original movie called Don't Look Under the Bed. And I don't know, have you ever seen this?
Honestly, this is the first time I'm hearing of
Yeah.
it. When did this come out?
This was 1999, and I first watched it as part of my Disney Scares month that I do in October. And I was really impressed. It's very clever. It's about this young girl, and she starts seeing all these weird things. There's all these letters that are all written all over the lockers on the way to school, and just other strange things kind of happening all around. Then she ends up meeting this young man who she finds out is an imaginary friend. Basically, there's this whole lore in the movie about how if somebody stops believing in imaginary friends too early, then that's when you create a boogeyman. So, and what had happened is her brother was had cancer, and so she kind of not only stopped believing too young, but also kind of encouraged him to stop believing and to like grow up and everything, and this whole experience had and so because they did that, then the boogeyman is created, and under it's the title Don't Look Under the Bed, and so they have to try to save the imaginary friend and kill off the boogeyman. And I thought the world building and the special effects for for what it is, Disney Channel movie, were quite clever and fun. And I thought it was a smart idea for story. And it also, the imaginary friend is African American, and you actually even have a kiss at one point between a white girl and black kid for 1999. That was pretty big deal, I think, actually. And it's a good movie. It's well done. It has a good script. It's very clever, and I think all the kids are up for the challenge. They're all decent actors, and so if you are looking for something that's a little scary and has some pretty spooky imagery, but not too much, it's still Disney. Then I think this is a good choice. I thought it was pretty clever.
Yeah, this kind of sounds, and I hope I don't come across as like insulting in any way, but it kind of sounds like Drop Dead Fred.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that. I've never seen it. I didn't hear good things, but I've never seen it.
It's pretty bad, but when I heard imaginary friend, I'm like,
right,
friend, that kind of sounds like Drop Dead Fred. But but like you said, this was released in '99, and I was 2 years old back
okay.
so and I didn't start watching.
Depressing.
and I didn't start watching Disney Channel until like 2005 or 6, so
right.
that definitely would have flown under my radar. But now that you talk about it around Halloween, I think I may want to take a look.
Yeah, and the boogeyman whole aesthetic, I think, is done pretty well. He's pretty scary, and there's like a heart to it because of this whole thing with her brother and cancer and everything like that. So I definitely recommend it. I think people would like it if they give it a shot. So there we go. We did it. Got our 5 recommendations. Well, let's read off our list real quick. Just reminding people what we suggested. So for me, I have the behind the scenes films from Disney Nature, Diving with Dolphins being the most recent. Then we have the Imagineering story about the history of Disney Imagineering. Togo, Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. the one good, Cheap Cool. And then we have Don't Look Under the Bed from Disney Channel.
So my list is The Rocketeer, Newsies, The Three Musketeers, A Goofy Movie, and Hercules.
Great. So, Ryan, where can people find you in your channel?
You can find me on YouTube at Ryan Cam Movie Reviews. Just search there, and you will find me. I've got 2 running series going on since the movie theaters are all closed now. Very sad about that. One is called the AFI Project, where I'm going to be reviewing every single movie on AFI's top 100 movies of all time list. It's a decent excuse for me to talk about some of the best movies ever made. And then I've got another series called I Finally Saw, where I take a look at semi-famous movies that I've never seen. So that includes coming up episodes like Matt Reeves' Cloverfield and Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I've got a lot of content coming up on there. And of course on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and my Letterboxd is all at RyanCam20.
Great. Yes, and you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. And you can find me at the Hallmarkies Podcast. So make sure to check that out. So we have lots of good stuff coming out. We're going to have a Talking Disney episode on the Aristocats. So that's going to be a lot of fun with me and Stanford. So look forward to that. We'll have a Sunday devotional coming up too, and a lot of other good stuff. So I'll look forward to hearing you guys' thoughts on all of that. So let us know what you think. If you've seen any of these 10 different things that we've recommended, let us know if you like them, and what are some hidden gems that you like that are on Disney Plus right now. We would love to hear your thoughts. So thanks so much, and thanks so much, Ryan, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye, everyone.
Bye.